Alright, our last problem in this set, problem number 5, says that for 8 weeks worth of work, Melanie will receive $600 and a new computer. After only 6 weeks of work, she would be entitled to a new computer, but only an additional $150. What is the value of the computer in dollars? Alright. So, we're trying to find the value of the computer. So my hint to you would be to use a variable for the computer. Let's call it C. Makes logical sense. Let's say that C is the value of the computer. Okay? And if you use C, then you know that $600 plus C, the value of the new computer, would pay for 8 weeks worth of work. And you know that $150 plus C would pay for 6 weeks worth of work. And given that, you ought to be able to use a little bit of algebra and figure it out. So there you go. Try the problem and come back for the solution. And here is the solution. Let's just do that. Okay, so we know for 8 weeks worth of work, I'm just going to list out what we know. I'm going to say 8 weeks. For 8 weeks, she would get $600 plus a computer. Okay? And for 6 weeks, she would get $150 plus a computer. Right? So that's what we're given. So it's always a good idea to, right off the bat, to just sort of list out what you know. And so the one thing we could do is that if we take the difference of these two things, this is how much she would get paid for 8 weeks, this is how much she would get paid for 6 weeks. So if we took the difference of those two, that's one way to do it, you would get how much she would get paid for 2 weeks. Alright? So if we subtract those two, then C minus C is 0. So that's kind of nice. We get rid of C altogether. And if we subtract 150 from 600, we get $450. So for 2 weeks, she would get paid $450. And if we divide that by 2, then 1 week would be, she would get $225, right? So she's being paid at a rate about of exactly $225 per week. But then we have this computer in here. So let's use that to see if she was being paid totally in money and she worked for 6 weeks, then you could take $225 times 6, and what do you get? Let's see, that's 30, carry the 3, 12, 15, carry the 1, 12, 13. She would get $1,350 if she's being paid totally in cash. But she's not being paid totally in cash. She's getting a computer, and for 6 weeks she would get $150 plus a computer. But the value should be the same. So if we just subtract $150 from this, we should get the value of the computer, right? Because if she was being paid in cash, she'd get $1,350, but she's only getting $150 and a computer, so the rest is being paid in the value of the computer. So if we subtract these two, we get $1,200. So that means that the computer is worth $1,200. Alright. Now let's see. Can I show you another way to do this? There's always more than one way to do these problems. Another way you could think of it is that 6 weeks is basically 3/4 of 8, because 6 over 8 is equal to 3/4, right? So you could also set it up this way algebraically. You could say that what am I looking for? That x plus $150. Okay, or actually, you know what? Let me use c, because that's what I used before. That's how I divide my variables. I better be consistent. So I'm going to say c plus $150 is 3/4 of what you would get for 8 weeks. So, and that was c plus $600. And that's just a straightforward algebra problem. So let's just work that out. That would be c plus 150 is equal to 3/4 c plus 3/4 of 600 would be 450. Alright, and then let's subtract 3/4 c from both sides. 3/4 c minus 3/4 c. And while we're at it, why don't we just subtract 150 from both sides? We'll do 2 steps in one. Okay, so if we take 1c minus 3/4 c, we end up with 1/4 c. And if we take 150 from 150, that's 0. And 3/4 c minus 3/4 c is 0. And 450 minus 150 is just 300. So 1/4 of the value of the computer is 300. So if we multiply both sides by 4, we would get c is equal to 1200. Okay? That's just another way of getting the same thing. We just set up the algebra problem a bit differently. So there you go. There's a couple of ways to do it.